The morning sky above Hollow Creek was the color of old ashes, the kind that lingered after a long fire has burned itself out, and in the center of town, beneath that dead gray light, stood the gallows, tall and splintered like a skeleton of justice. Evelyn Hart's wrists were bound before her fingers stiff from the cold and the rough rope that bit into her skin, but she kept her head high. The whole town had come to see her hang a woman, they said, too proud for her place, too wild for her own good, too stubborn to bow to the man who thought they owned the earth. The air was heavy with whispers and boots scraping the dirt. She could feel their eyes on her like thorns pressing into her back, each one pricking with judgment, pity, or just plain curiosity. The sheriff stood beside her, his hat pulled low, the Bible trembling in his hand as he read the sentence. "Evelyn May Hart," he said, his voice cracking like a dry twig in the wind, "you have been found guilty by the people of Hollow Creek for theft of property, false claim to the Hart Ranch, and defiance of court order. The sentence is death by hanging, to be carried out at sunrise." A murmur rippled through the crowd, soft as a snake's hiss. Evelyn's throat was too dry to swallow, her heart too tired to fight. She had cried all the tears she had in her during those long nights in the jail cell, listening to the clock tick like the heartbeat of doom. Now, there was nothing left but the dust under her boots and the ghosts of everything she'd lost. Her father's face flickered in her mind. Thomas Hart, the proud rancher of Hollow Creek, the man who'd taught her to ride before she could read, who'd said once, "A heart never bends, Evie." Not to man, not to storm, not to fate. She'd believed him. But fate, it seemed, had bent her all the same. The sheriff hesitated, his lips pressing together like he wanted to say more, maybe even to stop it, but the law in those parts was half politics, half fear, and all prejudice. "I'm sorry, Evie," he muttered under his breath, too soft for anyone else to hear. Evelyn didn't answer. She wasn't angry at him. The man was just doing what man did, what the town demanded. She glanced at the rope swaying in the wind and thought how thin it looked, and yet how strong. Somewhere in the back of the crowd, she saw her uncle, Samuel Hart, standing tall in his fine black coat, silver buttons gleaming like coins under the rising sun. His face was smug, his eyes cold and satisfied. That was the face of the man who'd stolen everything. The Hart Ranch had been hers by right, and her father's will made that clearer, but when he died last winter, the paper had vanished like it never existed. 2 nights later, Samuel had come into town with a lawyer and 3 men who swore under oath they'd seen Thomas sign the property over to him before dying. A lie so thick it stank, but the kind of lie that rich men could make into truth with enough whiskey and threats. Evelyn had fought it. She'd gone to the courthouse with what little evidence she had, but when she refused to back down, Samuel claimed she'd forged documents, that she was trying to steal his ranch. They threw her in gaol, and in a town that didn't much care for women who spoke too loud. The verdict had been decided before the trial began. Now she was the criminal, and he was the landowner. The crowd stirred as the priest stepped forward, mumbling words from the good book, and Evelyn's eyes drifted toward the horizon. The light was changing, the pale blue sky deepening into something gold. A dust cloud rose far off where the plains stretched endless and flat, but she didn't notice it then. She was thinking about the ranch, the smell of the sage after rain, the sound of the wind through the cottonwoods, the way her father's laughter used to echo in the stables when she'd tumble off a horse and pop right back up, swearing she'd ride better next time. Those memories burned her chest worse than fear. She didn't want to die, but more than that, she didn't want to die forgotten, her father's name trampled under her uncle's boots. The sheriff cleared his throat. "Any last words?" he asked, the formality of it more cruel than merciful. Evelyn looked at the faces in front of her, men who had bought her father's cattle, women who had shared her mother's cornbread at Sunday socials, and realized not one of them would speak up for her now. That was how Hollow Creek worked. Loyalty melted faster than ice in the July sun when money got involved. She opened her mouth, but before she could speak, the distant sound of hoofbeats broke through the silence. It started faint, just a rhythm under the wind, but it grew fast, strong, like a heartbeat on fire. Heads turned, a murmur swept the crowd. The sheriff frowned. The priest stopped reading, and then the rider came into view, a tall man on a black stallion, coat flapping behind him like a shadow come to life. Someone gasped, "That's Colt Ramsey." The name traveled like wildfire. Evelyn felt her breath hitch. Everyone in 3 counties knew that name. Colt Ramsey, the rancher from Silver Mesa, the man who'd once stared down a gang of rustlers single-handed and lived to tell the tale. A loner, a gunfighter when needed, a rancher when peace allowed. He'd ridden through Hollow Creek a few times before, quiet and polite. The kind of man who didn't waste words but whose eyes missed nothing. No one knew exactly what side of the law he was in. Some said outlaw, some said savior, but everyone agreed on one thing: Colt Ramsey didn't ride into town unless he had business. The stallion came to a stop right beside the gallows, dust swirling around his boots as Colt swung down. His face was half hidden beneath his hat, but the calmness in his movement drew every gaze. "Sheriff," he said, his voice steady, carrying just enough steel to make the air tighten. "You're about to hang an innocent woman." The sheriff stiffened. "This ain't your concern, Colt. She's being tried fair and square." Colt's eyes shifted to Samuel Hart, who looked suddenly less sure of himself. "Fair and square?" Colt said slowly. "That what you call it when a man burns a safe to hide a will?" The crowd murmured. Samuel's jaw tightened. "You don't know what you're talking about." Colt reached into his coat and pulled out a folded piece of paper, edges singed and brittle. "I was at the Hart Ranch last night," he said. "Found this half-burned in the cellar. Thomas Hart's will, signed and sealed, leaving everything to his daughter, Evelyn." The sheriff blinked, unsure whether to believe it, but Colt wasn't done. "I took it to Clearwater." Judge Harlan looked it over himself, said it's as legal as sunrise. He handed the paper to the sheriff, whose hands trembled as he read. The seal was real, the handwriting unmistakable. "By the authority of the state," he whispered, "this names Evelyn May Hart as rightful heir." He turned, eyes wide. "This means a broken bar." Colt nodded. "This means she's not a thief. It means you're about to hang the wrong person." Samuel's face turned red. "She forged it." His words were cut short by the click of Colt's revolver being cocked. The sound cracked the air like lightning. "Careful, Samuel," Colt said softly. "You're talking to the wrong man to lie to." His voice carried something dangerous, something that made even the sheriff step back. "You've cheated this woman long enough. You tried to take another breath on her land, and I swear I'll send you to hell to explain yourself to her father." For a long second, no one moved. Then, finally, the sheriff reached up and sliced through the rope. The noose fell away. Evelyn stumbled, catching herself against the wooden post. The air rushed into her lungs, harsh and cold. Colt stepped forward, steadying her by the arm. "Easy," he said quietly. His hand was firm, warm despite the morning chill. She looked up into his eyes, a gray, steady, and unreadable, but not unkind. "You're safe now," he said, but even as he spoke, she knew it wasn't true. Men like her uncle didn't stop because the law told them to. Samuel lunged suddenly, roaring with rage, but Colt was faster. The gun came up, and a bullet hissed into the dirt at Samuel's boots, close enough to make him freeze mid-stride. Colt's face didn't change. "Don't make me regret not aiming higher," he said. The sheriff motioned for 2 deputies, who quickly grabbed Samuel and dragged him away, spitting curses all the while. The crowd, once loud with judgment, now stood silent. No one dared meet Evelyn's eyes. Shame had a way of shrinking people down. When it was over, the square emptied slowly. Colt turned back to her. "Can you ride?" he asked. She nodded weakly. Her voice came out rough. "Why did you do it? Why come all this way for me?" Colt adjusted his hat, looking out at the plains like the answer was somewhere in the horizon. "Your father once gave me shelter when I had nothing," he said. "He told me I'd find my purpose again someday. Guess today's the day." Evelyn's throat tightened. "You risked your life for a promise?" Colt's lips curved faintly. "A man's word is all he's got out here." He helped her onto his horse, mounting behind her. The warmth of his chest against her back was strangely comforting and unsettling all at once. The gallows creaked behind them as the wind picked up, the rope swaying like a ghost of what almost was. They rode out of Hollow Creek under a rising sun, its gold light spilling across the plains. Neither of them spoke for a long time. The town faded behind them, swallowed by the dust. Evelyn's heart pounded with a mix of fear and disbelief. Free. She was free. Yet every breath she took carried the weight of what she'd seen of the people's silence, The sheriff's guilt, her uncle's hatred. She knew it wasn't over. "They'll come for me again," she said quietly. Colt's arms tightened slightly around the reins. "Let 'em," he replied. "You've got someone to ride with now." His words weren't a promise exactly, but they were enough. By the time they reached the edge of her ranch, the sun had dipped low, painting the fields in amber. The Hart ranch looked different than she remembered. The fences broken, windows boarded, the barn half collapsed. It felt like a ghost town, hollow and bruised. She dismounted slowly, staring at the land that had once been her whole world. "They ran it into the ground," she whispered. Colt stood beside her, silent, letting her take it in. "We can fix it," he said finally. "One post, one board at a time." She turned to him, tears glinting in her eyes. "You don't have to help me," she said. He met her gaze steadily. "Your father helped me when he didn't have to. I owe him that much." "And maybe," his voice softened, "maybe I owe myself the chance to do something right."